The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of formaldehyde and fear. It was a scent that clung to the walls, to the very fabric of the place, seeping into the pores of anyone who dared to enter. The atmosphere was oppressive, almost as if the room itself was alive, breathing in the dread and exhaling a palpable sense of unease. Moonlight, fractured by grimy windows, painted streaks of silver across the cold steel tables. The light seemed to dance, creating eerie patterns that played tricks on the eyes. It was as if the moon itself was trying to illuminate the secrets hidden within the shadows, but only managed to deepen the mystery. It was the witching hour in the morgue, and the silence was a living, breathing thing. The quiet was so profound that it seemed to have a weight, pressing down on everything within the room. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric was amplified, echoing through the stillness like a ghostly whisper. Old Man Hemlock, the caretaker, shuffled between the rows of lifeless forms. His steps were slow and deliberate, each one a testament to the years he had spent in this place. He moved with a familiarity that spoke of countless nights spent among the dead. Yet there was a hesitance in his movements tonight. His hunched figure, illuminated by a single flickering bulb, cast long dancing shadows on the walls. The light flickered and wavered, as if it too was afraid of the darkness that surrounded it. The shadows seemed to come alive, twisting and contorting in ways that defied logic, creating an almost hypnotic effect. He'd seen a lot in his years, but tonight felt different. A chill snaked down his spine. It was a cold that seemed to come from within, a deep, bone-chilling cold that no amount of layers could ward off. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes were following his every move. As he passed by the newest arrival, a shiver racked his body. The body lay still, covered by a white sheet that did little to hide the outline of the form beneath. There was something unsettling about this one, something that set it apart from the others. It was as if the very air around it was charged with a strange energy. He paused, his gaze drawn to the toe tag flapping gently in the non-existent breeze. The tag seemed to move of its own accord, as if trying to catch his attention. It was a small, seemingly insignificant detail, but in the silence of the morgue, it was a sound that echoed like a thunderclap. The name, scrawled in hurried handwriting, sent a jolt of unease through him. Elijah Croft. The letters were jagged, almost as if they had been written in a state of panic. The name itself seemed to carry a weight, a significance that he couldn't quite place. It was a name that stirred something deep within him, a memory that was just out of reach. Why did that name sound so familiar? It gnawed at him, a persistent itch at the back of his mind. He racked his brain, trying to recall where he had heard it before. It was a name that carried a sense of foreboding, a name that seemed to be tied to something dark and ominous. As he stood there staring at the tag, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was far from over. Old Man Hemlock couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled upon him. It was as if the shadows themselves whispered secrets he was never meant to hear. He knew he should continue his rounds, ignore the unease gnawing at his insides. The corridors of the old estate were familiar, yet tonight they seemed to stretch endlessly, each step echoing louder than the last. But the name, Elijah Croft, echoed in the caverns of his memory. It was a name he hadn't thought of in years, a name that carried with it a weight of forgotten stories and buried secrets. He found the old ledger, its leather cover cracked and worn, and ran a gnarled finger down the list of names. Each name told a tale, but it was Elijah Croft's that called to him, like a ghost from the past. There it was, faded ink on yellowed paper, Elijah Croft, laid to rest nearly a century ago. The ink, though faded, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if the name itself was trying to speak to him. The same Elijah Croft now resting just feet away? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, the kind that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. A cold sweat prickled his skin. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him, judging him. He dismissed it as an old man's fancy, a trick of the mind. After all, the dead couldn't speak, could they? Yet the feeling persisted, gnawing at the edges of his sanity. Yet a morbid curiosity took root in his gut. What if there was something more? What if the past wasn't as buried as he thought? He had to see, had to know. With a trembling hand, he reached for the door, the barrier between him and the truth. The hinges creaked as it opened, revealing the darkness beyond. He stepped inside, his heart pounding in his chest, ready to confront whatever lay hidden in the shadows. Hesitantly, Old Man Hemlock approached the body. The dim light cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the room feel even colder and more foreboding. Each step echoed in the silence, amplifying his growing dread. The steel table was cold beneath his touch. It sent a shiver up his spine, a stark reminder of the lifelessness it held. He could feel the chill seeping into his bones, making his fingers tremble. His hand trembled as he reached for the sheet, pulling it back slowly, dreading what he might find. The fabric felt heavy, almost as if it resisted his touch, as if it knew the secrets it concealed. The face that stared back at him was pale, lips drawn tight in a grimace. It was a visage frozen in time, capturing the last moments of agony or perhaps a final, silent scream. But it was the eyes that held him captive. Wide, vacant, yet filled with a chilling familiarity. They seemed to bore into his soul, as if trying to communicate something from beyond the grave. It was the face from the old portrait in the morgue's waiting area, the portrait of its founder, Elijah Croft. Hemlock had seen that stern face countless times, but never imagined it would haunt him in such a way. Suddenly, a low groan seemed to emanate from the body. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably real. It sent a jolt of fear through Hemlock, making his heart race. Hemlock stumbled back, his heart pounding against his ribs. His breath came in short, panicked gasps as he tried to make sense of what he had just heard. Was it a trick of his mind, or something far more sinister? Was it his imagination, or had the corpse just moved? The room seemed to close in around him, the air growing thick with an unspoken terror. Hemlock's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of life, any explanation for the impossible. The flickering light above added to the surreal atmosphere, casting fleeting shadows that danced on the walls. Each flicker seemed to bring the room to life, making the dead seem almost animated. Hemlock's face was a mask of fear and confusion. He had come seeking closure, but found only more questions. The whispers from the slab were not just in his mind, they were real, and they demanded to be heard. Fear, raw and primal, surged through Old Man Hemlock. The groan, faint but unmistakable, came again. This time, there was no doubt. The corpse was stirring. Panic seized him as he watched in horror. The body twitched, fingers spasmed, scratching against the metal table. It was as if some unseen force was breathing life back into the lifeless form. The air grew heavy, the temperature dropping. The single bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling flickered ominously, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed on the walls. A low growl rumbled from the corpse's throat, sending chills crawling down Hemlock's spine. Section 5. Clawing at the walls. The corpse, imbued with unnatural strength, bucked against the restraints. The leather straps, meant to hold the dead, strained and groaned, threatening to snap under the weight of the awakening monster. Elijah Croft, or whatever inhabited his stolen form, roared, a guttural sound of fury and hunger that echoed through the silent morgue. It clawed at the air, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. Old Man Hemlock, paralyzed with terror, could only watch as the unthinkable unfolded before him. His legs felt like lead, his voice stuck in his throat. This was no nightmare, this was reality, a terrifying reality he was trapped in. Section 6. Terror in the morgue. With a sickening crack, the leather restraints snapped, sending the reanimated Elijah Croft tumbling to the floor. It landed with a thud, its eyes never leaving Old Man Hemlock. Panic finally broke through the terror. Hemlock scrambled back, his foot catching on a metal tray, sending instruments clattering across the floor. The sound echoed in the deathly silence, a macabre symphony of fear. He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding against his ribs like a drum. He had to get out, had to escape the nightmare unfolding before him. But the exit seemed miles away, the distance insurmountable. Section 7. Fleeing for his life. Adrenaline surged through Old Man Hemlock as he turned and ran, his only thought escape. The reanimated corpse of Elijah Croft, driven by some unknown force, lurched after him. He could hear the heavy thud of its footsteps echoing behind him, each one a death knell to his racing heart. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, a reminder of the horror he was running from. His lungs burned, his legs screamed for respite, but he couldn't stop. Not now. Not while that monster was on his heels, its hunger palpable, its rage echoing in every guttural growl. Section 8. Trapped. Old Man Hemlock's lungs burned as he careened through the labyrinthine corridors of the morgue, the heavy footsteps of his pursuer echoing behind him. Panic tightened its icy grip around his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. He rounded a corner, his hope flickering as he spotted the heavy metal door that led to the outside world. But as he fumbled for the handle, his blood ran cold. It was locked. He rattled the handle desperately, but the door wouldn't budge. He was trapped, cornered like prey by a predator who grew ever closer. Section 9, A Glimmer of Hope. Despair threatened to engulf Old Man Hemlock, but the instinct to survive burned bright. He cast a frantic glance around the dimly lit corridor. There had to be another way out. Something, anything. His eyes fell upon a narrow window at the end of the hallway, its glass grimy but intact. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was his only chance. He could hear the heavy breathing of the reanimated corpse as it closed in, its presence filling the corridor with the stench of death. Time was running out. Section 10. Will he escape? With a surge of adrenaline, Old Man Hemlock sprinted towards the window, his lungs screaming for air. He could hear the guttural growls of the creature echoing behind him, urging him forward. He reached the window, throwing his weight against it. The old frame groaned in protest but held. He rammed it again, and this time the glass shattered, sending shards raining down onto the pavement below. He didn't hesitate, didn't look back. He scrambled through the narrow opening, ignoring the searing pain as the broken glass tore at his skin. He had to get away. Section 11. Join the horror! Did Old Man Hemlock escape the clutches of the reanimated Elijah Croft? Or did the curse of the morgue claim another victim? Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more terrifying tales from the crypt. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a